Welcome dear all. So the topic for the today in overheads chapter is the next part, that is absorption of overheads. Now we have done the allocation, we have done apportionment, we have done reapportionment of overheads, and now we are going to do the absorption of overhead. So what does it mean? It means recovery of overhead cost from the cost of production. Now, if I say till now what we did, we accumulated the cost under the production departments. So there was a certain cost of these production departments. We accumulated it by the methods, these methods, and now we know that these are the overheads of production department P1, P2. Now if I say under P1 department, two products name A and B are being made, and similarly over here we are making three products C, D and E. So now these accumulated overheads are to be charged or are to be absorbed by these products. At which rate? This is the thing which we are going to do today. So I can say that it is the absorption of overhead is the process of absorbing of all overheads which are allocated or apportioned over a particular cost center or a production department. So what are the steps? The steps are the steps to follow in order to divide these overheads to the various products. The first step is that we will be computing overhead rate. Now this overhead rate will be computed simple. All the overhead expenses we are having over here, which we kept xxx, this will be divided by a base. So now what that base can be? That base can be number of units. Those base can be hours. Which hours? Either they can be labor hours or they can be machine hours. So there are many methods which we will be using. The first step we'll have a particular overhead rate. And what is the next step? The next step we will apply the overhead rate which we calculated in the first step to cost units. Cost unit, let's take an example. Over here, if I say that overhead expenses are 1,50,000 and the labor hours, overhead expenses over labor hours. So if I say the labor hours are 25,000. So what is the absorption rate? The absorption rate is rupees 6 per labor hour. Now how this will be applied to the cost unit? Now I told you in production department 1 we had two products being made, A and B. Now let's say this 1 unit of A required 10 labor hours. 1 unit of A required 10 labor hours. So what is the overhead cost? So the overhead cost for 1 unit of A will be 10 into 6, that is 60. And if I say in all we manufactured 100 units of A, so we will be multiplying it with 100 and I will be coming to know the total overheads which I have to distribute to product A out of the whole lot. So I hope the first part is clear. So now overhead rates, they can be the overhead rate which we have computed just now. It can be either the actual, that is we will take both numerator and denominator as the actual expenditure and the actual base, or it can be predetermined. Predetermined means we are going to use a certain estimation for when I say numerator denominator, numerator is the overhead expense and the denominator is the base. Base may be the units, maybe hours, maybe any quantity value, or it can be rupee value, that is the sales also. So here we are going to take the actual figures in order to calculate this overhead rate, and then in predetermined we are using the estimations. The screen is not getting okay. Now it's fine. Now we can also have a blanket rate. Blanket rate means for the whole factory. Now in the previous we had two production departments, and these two production departments are working in one factory, and instead of going for separate overhead rates, we can also compute a overhead rate for the whole factory where two production departments are working. Let's say production department 1 is manufacturing indoor games and production department 2 is manufacturing the outdoor games. So indoor games may be the board game, that is the Ludo, or the Scrabble, something like that, and it can be a carom board type, or it can be anything. So and these are outdoor, that is bat or ball, or they are football or something like that. So now this is the blanket rate. It says that instead we go for separate overhead rates for each department, we prefer one rate for the whole factory. So I'll be adding up in blanket. The next is blanket overhead rate, that is the total overheads of whole factory. So total overheads of whole factory divided by the total hours, or the total wages, or the total, we can say, labor hours of the whole. So the base also in total, this we are preferring. But mind it, it is to be used only when the concern is small, and preferably it should be used where only a single product is made, because otherwise this method, if we apply, as I explained, to the various departments manufacturing so many products, then it will surely lead to over absorption or under absorption, leading to faulty fixation of selling price of these items. So this is to be kept in mind under the blanket rate. So the next rate is multiple overhead rate, which will say that multiple overhead rate, that is separate rates for each department can be used, or separate rate for each service department can be used, and then the distribution can be done, or there can be we can use a separate rate for those elements of cost where there are substantial differences in the material and the labor content. So this is preferably where the firms, they would like to have more degree of accuracy, that is they are not bothered about that there is much clerical work involved, but they want accuracy. So multiple overhead rate is used, means for everything particular you fix the rate accordingly. And then we have one more rate, that is the supplementary overhead rate. Now when I say supplementary overhead rate, it is to be used when we want to do the adjustment. Which adjustment? The adjustment of over absorption or under absorption of overhead. This I'll be showing with the help of the example. Now we come up, I think this part is clear, and we should move further. So I come up to the next part, that is how to absorb the production overheads. So production overheads, okay, I'll write in full. I was writing like this, production overheads, but instead I will write full. Production overheads can be absorbed. Now they can be absorbed on the basis of direct material cost. They can be absorbed on the basis of direct labor cost. Now I will be telling you the formula, and it's so easy how we are going to calculate the production overhead absorption on the basis of material cost. Minded formula is production overheads, that is the factory overheads, which we are going to use, and we are going to divide it by the, if I want to use the direct material cost method, I'll be dividing with the direct material cost. If I want the direct labor cost, I'll be dividing it with the direct wages. And in case I want to have the base, the prime cost, then in that case, I'll be dividing by the material, direct material plus direct labor plus direct expenses. So the formula is going to be either it is direct material or divided by direct labor, or we divide it by the prime cost and multiply by 100, and we will get an absorption rate. So prime cost, you very well know, sum total of all the direct expenses. The another method can be used is on the basis of hours. Now again, which hours? It can be either direct labor hours, or it can be the machine hours. So when I say the hours method, then we are not going to get a percentage. The formula will be production overheads divided by the direct labor hours or the machine hours, and the answer will be in per labor hour, either per labor hour, or the answer will be in per machine hour. Now, apart from these, there can be another method which we always use when we prepare cost sheet, that is the per unit method. You remember when we prepare cost sheet column, then in cost sheet column, let me show you. When we prepare cost sheet, we write down particulars, we write down the amount, and we calculate the per unit cost. This column, the per unit cost. So this method says that you can absorb the overheads, the production overheads on the basis of the per unit cost. So this could be used, or it can be on the basis of per, we can use it the selling price per unit also, or the sales, selling price or sales. But this method is not preferably used. It is not used. The other methods are taken up. So you can have a look once again at this, and then we proceed further. And now coming up to the next one. Next is absorption of administration overheads. Administration overheads are absorbed on the basis of, they are absorbed as a percentage of works cost, or they are absorbed as a percentage of sales. So what is the formula? Formula is administration overheads divided by works cost into 100, and over here administration overheads divided by the sales into 100, or it can be better from these two methods. I think you have seen mostly this being used in the numerical, that is as a percentage of the works cost. Then we have the next overheads, that is selling and distribution overheads. Now these selling and distribution overheads, the main methods which are used for distribution of these selling and distribution overheads are, one is rate per article. So on this basis we can divide, or again percentage of works cost method. I think most preferably used in many numericals, we have used this method. Many numericals have used this method also, that is rupees selling and distribution overheads are rupees 2 per unit sold. So this also, and the other methods are, that is it can be as a percentage of cash collected but rarely used. This method is again rarely used. It can be on the basis of number of sales orders. Again, this method is rarely used. Main is this method which we prefer. And the last is as a percentage of turnover. Now we have done the absorption rates regarding how to absorb these overheads, these three category of overheads. Now after we do the absorption, what it leads is that either, because we are using certain methods, we are using certain formulas, so either it is leading to overabsorption or it is leading to the underabsorption. So how to do the treatment of overabsorption or underabsorbed overheads? How to do the treatment of the overabsorption and underabsorbed overheads? Firstly, I would like to tell you what are overabsorbed overheads and what do you mean by underabsorbed. Over, when the thing or the value is shown more than actual it is. Under, when what have I written? Under, I should have written underabsorbed. Chalo, let me rectify. So underabsorbed overhead, when the value is shown less than what it actually is. So remember, if the amount absorbed is less than the amount incurred, now it will lead to what it will be leading to? It will be leading to underabsorbed. So underabsorption of overhead means the amount by which absorbed overheads fall short of the actual amount. And if I reverse the things, then what does that mean? That means the overabsorption of overheads. So overabsorption means excess of overheads absorbed over the actual amount of overheads which were incurred. Actual figures we can have from the financial accounting. Now this overabsorption and underabsorption needs to be treated. We have seen in reconciliation also that it has an effect on the profits. If we want to reconcile it with the financial accounting, we have to pay consideration to the overabsorption and the underabsorption part of the overheads. And mind it, if we don't rectify these things, our profit figure in cost will also not be accurate and will not be fixing up a relevant selling price, a competitive selling price for our product. So now how to treat this problem? Which problem? Overabsorption and underabsorption part. The first part says we can use what? A supplementary rate. So when I want to use a supplementary rate, remember what steps I will be taking. The step number 1 is, firstly I'll be finding out whether there is overabsorption or underabsorption of overheads. So this is the first step. So whether they are over or they are under. And now mind it, how to treat plus sign and minus sign. These two things you have to keep in mind. I repeat it. Firstly, find out whether the overheads are overabsorbed or underabsorbed. Then put two signs, that is plus or minus. And now remember, supplementary rate, after how we are going to calculate it, we are going to find out the difference. How the difference is, that is, we are going to find out the difference of the actual and the absorbed overheads. Now if the actual overheads incurred are 2 lakh, let's say, example I'll be giving it with, okay, if we are actual are 2 lakh and absorbed are 1,50,000. So actual are more, absorbed are less. So we can say it is underabsorbed. So underabsorbed are how much? What will it lead to? Suppose if I say overheads are 50,000 short. So it means in my cost account, I have taken lesser cost and I am showing more profits. but in actual the cost incurred is more and I am having lesser profits. So in order to rectify this position, I will try to find out the reasons of this. Firstly, the reason, whether the reason, if the reason is, let's say, idle facilities or any abnormal causes, then better we charge directly the cost to costing, profit and loss. That is, this part will be charged directly to the costing, profit and loss. And when I say abnormal causes can be strike, lockout, any major breakdown of machinery. So this could be done. Now, what about the other reasons? In that cases, we need to do the adjustment. So where this 50,000 would be adjusted? It needs to be adjusted somewhere. So remember, we will be doing the adjustment in the work in progress if there is any, to the finished goods stock. I'm mentioning certain things. I'll write it over here. We need to do the adjustment in the work in progress if there is any, and surely there will be. And then the closing stock of finished goods, we need to do the adjustment over there also, and we need to do the adjustment in cost of sales. So this 50,000, if the reasons are not this way, that is not because of the abnormal or these idle facilities, the reasons are not these abnormal ones, then we need to do the changes in which all things we need to do this 50,000 adjustment in work in progress, in closing stock of finished goods, and in cost of sales. Now I have written certain plus or minus over here. So what does that plus or minus means? Now under absorption is set right by a plus rate, while over absorption, I repeat, what did I say? Under absorption is set right by a plus rate, while over absorption is adjusted by a minus rate. Under absorption is to be adjusted by plus and over absorption by minus. Now I said 50,000 is to be adjusted to work in progress, to closing stock of finished goods, and to the work in progress in case there is any. So in this case, let us say that we have 4,000 units. For example, we have 4,000 units of closing stock of finished goods. So I need to do the adjustment in that. So how I'll be doing, I'll be showing you just now. Okay, so better is I take an illustration. So here is the illustration in front of you. The total overhead expenses of a factory are given, that is 4,46,380. Taking into account the normal working of the factory, overheads was recovered in production at, now this is given to you, at 1.25 per hour, and the actual working hours are 2,93,104. How would you proceed to close the book of accounts? Assuming that besides 7,800 units produced, so they have written that besides 7,800 units produced, 7,000 were sold. 7,000 were sold, and then they have written 200 is the equivalent units production also. So 200 units we are having, out of 7,800, 7,000 are sold and 200 is the work in progress figure. And then it's written, on investigation it was found that 50% of the unabsorbed overhead is on account of increase in the cost of indirect material and indirect labor. So this is normal. If the prices are increasing, that is normal. But the later 50% is because of the factory inefficiency. So if it is because of inefficiency, then it means it is an abnormal cause. So this 50% should go directly to costing profit and loss account. So now keeping these figures in mind, let us go for that how we have to solve this numerical. So I take up the data. So which is the first thing? First step was what? I want to know, step 1 was I want to know whether the overheads are over or under absorbed. So I have to write down how much overheads have been recovered. So what are the actual overhead and overheads absorbed? I want to know two datas. One is overhead absorbed and the another is actual overheads. So the question says actual overheads are 4,46,380. So actual overheads are given to us 4,46,380. And how to calculate this absorbed overhead? Let us go to the working note and we will be calculating. For absorbed overhead we are given actual working hours. They have given us actual working hours. I'll show you. It is given over here. Actual working hours are 2,93,104 and they are recovered at the rate of 1.25 per hour. So using this data, let us do the calculation first. So actual working hours are this and they are absorbed at the rate of 1.25 per hour. So we multiply and then we get something, a figure like 3,66,380. Now just see, actual is less or actual is more? Actual is more and the absorbed overheads are less. So it is a sign of what? When actual is more and absorbed are less, though it is under absorption and under absorption overheads. So what are we going to do? We are going to first of all write down the amount of overheads under recovered, or you can write under absorbed overheads, simply under absorbed overheads. So how we are going to find out? This is, we will subtract these and we can have the figure that is 80,000. Now question said that this reason, this 80,000, 50% of it was because of increase in prices of material and labor, and the rest 50% was because of the factory inefficiency. So this 50%, that is rupees 40,000, is to be transferred directly to costing profit and loss account. And now let us see how this 50%, I told you, if the question states about, like in this also we had that our total were 7,800, 7,000 were sold, 200 were work in progress. Let us write down 7,800 units were in all, 7,000 were sold. So these are sold units. So what about 800 units? What is that? So that is the finished goods stock. And then we had 200 units as work in progress also. So we are having 200 units as work in progress. So let me put up this data now. So it means we were supposed to do three sort of adjustment. One was cost of sales. Another is to be done to the closing stock of finished goods. And third is to the work in progress. I will be writing out how many units were these. So what are the units? The units are cost of sales, means the things, units which we have sold, but we will be doing the changes in the cost of sales, the cost part. I cannot do changes in the sales value, I can only do changes in the cost part. So I'll be doing supplementary rate adjustment in the cost of sales. Then how many units were in the finished goods? closing stock, they were 800 and the work in progress was 200 units. Now I need to use the supplementary rate. But firstly I need to calculate also. But see, what is the number of units? 7. 800 plus 2000, how many units? 8000. So I have to divide the under absorbed overheads to these 8000 units. So how the supplementary rate would be calculated? Divide supplementary. Why the things are not clearing up? I don't understand. I think this way is clear. So supplementary rate, when I calculate, it is the absorbed overhead, and that was how much? Now you remember 40,000 out of the 80,000, only 40,000 had to be adjusted to these, and the balance 40,000 we had taken for costing profit and loss, and only one part of 40,000 was to be taken. So I will be using only 40,000 and I have to divide it by the base. Base is इसको किस में divide करना है? In 8,000 units. So I'll be having a rate that is ₹5 per unit. So now we will be multiplying ₹5 over here and we'll be calculating the value. So this is 35,000, this is 4,000 and this is 1,000. So total comes out to be 40,000. Now what is the implication? Question says that we have to give the profit implication of this method. So what is the profit implication? The very important part. Profit implication of the over absorption or the under absorption part of the overheads. Now think of the trading P&L. You will be able to understand in a better way. Of course, not to make, just make up in your mind. Cost part is in this side. Cost इस साइड पे लिखते हैं. अब हमें remember under absorbed overheads had to be treated with plus na. We have to do the adjustment, that is we are going to increase their values. So when the value of cost of sales have to be increased by 35,000, cost factor on this side. If it will increase by 35,000, then what will happen to the profit? Profit will reduce. So the first, that is of when I do the adjustment in cost of sales, then the profit will reduce. Because if I increase cost, ये मैंने दोबारा बोलती हूँ, ट्रेडिंग P&L दिमाग में बनाओ. ये देखो कॉस्ट सारी हम डेबिट में लिखते हैं. तो कॉस्ट ऑफ सेल्स में हमने अभी बोला अंडर अब्जॉर्प्शन ओवरहेड्स को प्लस से करना है. प्लस मतलब हम कॉस्ट में जो भी हमारी फैक्टर्स आएंगे ये तीन, हमें उसमें प्लस फैक्टर के साथ, यानी कि वी विल बी एडिंग. तो इफ़ वी विल बी एडिंग इन द कॉस्ट, और अगर कॉस्ट में ऐड करना है तो कॉस्ट बढ़ेगी तो प्रॉफिट जो हम इस साइड पे कैलकुलेट करते हैं, प्रॉफिट क्या हो जाएगा? रिड्यूस. नाउ कम टू द नेक्स्ट वन, क्लोजिंग स्टॉक ऑफ फिनिश गुड्स. क्लोजिंग स्टॉक ऑफ फिनिश गुड्स किस साइड पे लिखते हैं हम? वी राइट इट ऑन द क्रेडिट साइड. सो क्लोजिंग स्टॉक ऑफ फिनिश गुड्स. जब मैं इसमें वैल्यू इंक्रीज करूंगी, आई विल इंक्रीज द वैल्यू बाय 4,000. तो जब 4,000 से इंक्रीज करूंगी तो इट मीन्स प्रॉफिट विल increase. Here profit will reduce by 35,000. Here profit will increase by 4,000. And similarly, closing stock of work in progress is also there. Again the same thing. So it will also increase by how much? The profit will increase by 1,000. So I hope the things are clear. So in all, if I want to say the value, because of the value of stock, the profit of the period will increase by 5,000. But on account of the cost of sales, the profit will reduce by 35,000. I hope the things are clear. And the rest 50%, that is 40,000 rupees, which we had transferred to costing profit and loss due to inefficiency of the factory. Suppose one thing more is asked, write down the journal entry for this unabsorbed under absorbed overheads. So what this entry is going to be? cost of sales account debited, finished goods account debited, work in progress account debited. 2. Factory overheads 35,000, 4,000, 1,000, so total 40,000. I hope you are clear with the journal entry part also. And the second entry would be, this is the first entry, and the second entry, the one which we transfer to costing profit and loss, that is costing profit and loss account debited to factory overheads. एंड अगर ये ओवर एब्जॉर्प्शन का क्वेश्चन होता तो ये रिवर्स हो जाना था. रिमाइंडेड दिस विल बी रिवर्सिंग, इसको चेंज कर देंगे. ऑफ कोर्स इनएफिशिएंसी वाली एंट्री तो ऐसे ही आएगी, बट दिस पार्ट विल बी रिवर्स्ड. सो दैट्स इट. वी हैव डन अवे विद द होल चैप्टर ऑफ ओवरहेड्स. और इसके साथ अभी सिर्फ एक मशीन आर रेट रहता है, वो अभी करेंगे.